All right, we're starting a new unit today. This unit will be over political parties, elections, the executive branch, all of those things. And this is normally where we would have our student elections, and we would, choose political parties and write a platform and run commercials. This is what you voted in team over the years. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it this year with one government class, but it really threw a wrench into it when we're working from home. So there may be some versions of the election we do, but we certainly won't do the election like we've done in the past. Let's start today with political parties. Now, if you have not printed off this note guide, you should. I shared it with you, and or print it off, or I guess you can type your notes online if you prefer to do that. But you should have this note guide out. We are going to go through this, and my goal is that if we're back to school by May, that we will test a real test over this one, not like the test we did on the last. So we're going to start with political parties today. First of all, let's get a definition of what a political party is. So, a political party is essentially a group of people who share similar ideas, but it's a little more complicated than that. They work to get their members elected so they can get government to work to promote those ideas. Think about what the Republican Party wants or the Democratic Party wants. Remember, we studied liberal conservative. So, if we look at the Republican Party, they would like to get Republicans elected so they can push through legislation that is reflective of that conservative ideology. And the Democrats want the same thing. And we know from studying Congress that if you have a majority in either branches of either house of Congress, it helps to get your stuff through. So political parties are a group of people that are trying to get their own members elected so they can get their own political ideology in the law, in the policy. In the world today, there are three types of political party systems. There's a one party system, which is not really a democracy. A one party system, as you may have figured, has only one political party, only one allowed. Think of that as like China, a communist party, or Cuba. Okay, it's not really a democracy. Democracies uh, may have a two party system or a multi party system. Let's talk about the two party system first. First of all, don't let the name confuse you. A two party system does not mean there are only two political parties. The United States is a two party system, but we have over 40 political parties. We are considered a two party system because we only have two political parties with power, two political parties that actually win elections. So if you look at both the House and the Senate, every single member is either a Democrat or Republican, except for a couple of independents. But an independent is someone who is not a member of any political party. So the only two political parties represented are the Democrats and Republicans. Okay, there are lots of political parties in the United States. They just are not powerful. They don't win elections. They don't have big memberships. So we're considered a two party system because we only have two that win, not that because we only have two. Okay, I know that can be confusing. A multi party system is a democracy that has multiple political parties that win elections. So if you look at most democracies in the world, they are multi party systems. And let's use Great Britain for example. If you look at the House of Commons in Great Britain, there's probably 7 different political parties that are represented there. They have members elected from those 7 different parties. The United States could be a multi-party system. We could evolve into that, but we've really only been a two-party system for most of our time. It's not in the Constitution. In fact, political parties weren't even around for the first election, but they evolved soon after. By the second presidential election, we had political parties. In the United States today, or in South Dakota, this is a fairly up to date numbers. I didn't change these. I did look at the numbers, and they're not much different, so I just left them here. South Dakota has 258,000 Republicans and 155,000 Democrats. We also have 130,000 independents. Now, an independent is someone who is not a member of either the Republican or Democratic Party or really any political party. They've chosen not to be a member of a political party. So we have a large number of people that are independents, that independent of political parties. Our third biggest political party in the state is the Libertarian Party. which is a fairly large party in South Dakota, but they only have 1,900 members. Okay, and we'll talk about the Libertarian Party, or we'll talk about what these are called third parties, and then other political parties that are not recognized in the state. There's 1,352 people who are registered as something other than a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or no political party at all. If you look at the United States as a whole, 29% of Americans say they're a Democrat and 25% are Republican, but we have 42% that are independent. So even though the Democrats and the Republicans are the biggest political parties, more people are independent that are not a member of any political party. When these independents say, well, which way do you lean? Do you lean towards the Democrats or lean to the Republicans? We notice that the United States is fairly well split. If this would get out of here, you have 44 with leaners. 44% of Americans say they would Democrat, and 43% say Republican. Okay, so even though not all of those members, all those people are registered as Democrats or Republicans. Politics One lists every political party in the United States, and you'll get an assignment using this website tomorrow, but I want to introduce it a little bit today. As of November of 2018, there was 46 what we call these minor parties. Any party that is not the Democrats or the Republicans, we call either third parties or minor parties. Both names are used. This lists all the political parties in the United States. And here's the Democratic Party, and then here's the Republican Party, but here are all their third parties or minor parties if you prefer. We have the Constitution Party and the Green Party, we have the Libertarian Party, and then some smaller ones, the Alliance Party, the American Party, and so on. And I'm not going to read through them all. You'll have a chance to look at these later. But as I scroll down, you see there are lots of political parties in the United States, not just the Democrats and the Republicans. So again, we are a two-party system, but not because we only have two political parties. Okay, so let's look at one other thing. Like in the last presidential election, if you want to see the results when President Trump won the presidency, this is popular vote here. Now, popular vote, Hillary Clinton got close to 3 million more popular votes than Donald Trump, but electoral votes that matter, and we'll study the Electoral College later this week. But you notice that 62 million votes for President Trump, 65 million Trump votes for Hillary Clinton. But all of these other candidates, and let me open this up, all of these other people were on the presidential election in at least some ballots, some states, and they all received votes. Like Gary Johnson, a libertarian, got 4.4 million votes. That's a lot of votes. You probably never heard of Gary Johnson. Now, it's only 3% of the popular vote, but it's still 4.4 million. Jill Stein of the Green Party got 1.4 million. Independent here, but here's Darrell Castle of the Constitution Party, only 203,000, but still, that's a lot of votes. Then we don't typically even hear about these candidates because in reality, they don't have a chance of winning. Gary Johnson, even though he got 4.4 million votes, he needed 62 million votes to win. So, he was a long ways from winning the election. So, minor parties or third parties then are currently any party that is not the Democrat or Republican Party. And you realize that they rarely win elections. So occasionally they will. We had a governor of Minnesota, relatively recently, within the last 20 years, that won. He was a Reform Party candidate and won the governorship. Sometimes they'll win state and local spots, but rarely do they win, any national thing, and rarely do they win a governorship or more than just one seat, maybe in a state legislature. So even though minor parties rarely win, they still can play a role. They still can impact elections. And let's take a look at 3 ways in which minor parties can impact an election. One, probably the biggest one, is they play what is known as the spoiler role. The spoiler role is that they would take votes away from one candidate or another. Now, they don't take the votes away equally. They take votes away from one candidate more than another. And that's kind of important to understand. let's take a look at this. Let's see if we can get an example. So let's say we have 100 votes, or 100% of the votes if you prefer. And let's say that we have the liberals, you remember we did political ideology, let's say 60% of the people, or 60 votes, would vote liberal um, for a liberal candidate, and 40 would vote for a conservative candidate. Well, let's say that we have three candidates. Candidate A and B are both liberal candidates, and candidate C is a conservative candidate. All right, well, because we have two liberal candidates over here, they're going to split these 60 votes up. So let's just say that candidate A gets 25 votes and candidate B gets 35 votes. Now that equals 60. Candidate C gets 40 votes. Candidate C wins, even though only 40 conservatives voted for him. This is called the spoiler role. Candidate A played the spoiler role. If candidate A wasn't in the election, we can assume that these 25 voters would have voted for candidate B, which would have gave candidate B the victory. Okay, so when we have a political party, let's say that this is a major party. Let's say B is a Democratic Party, C is a Republican Party, let's say A is the Green Party. The Green Party is a more liberal party. Okay, if you're a Green Party candidate, you're probably not going to vote for a conservative, or if you're a Green Party voter, you wouldn't vote for a conservative. But if the Green Party wasn't in the election, you might vote for this candidate. So anytime a minor party takes votes away, they actually take votes away from a candidate who is closest to them in the political ideology spectrum. I can give you an example. Now, in the 2012, in the let's go back to the 2000 election. This was a 2000 election electoral map. Um, it's a little bit different today because it changes every 10 years, but this is what it looked like then. And in that election, we had Al Gore, who was a Democratic candidate, and George Bush, who was a Republican candidate. Now, we also had Ralph Nader, who ran as a Green Party, a more liberal party, and Pat Buchanan, who ran as a Reform Party candidate, which was a more conservative party. When it was all said and done, this was a very close election. Al Gore, 50,992,000 votes. George Bush, 50,455,000 votes. Now, again, we'll study the Electoral College, and you'll see that sometimes you can get the most popular votes and still lose the election because it comes to electoral votes. Ralph Nader, 2.8 million votes. Okay, and Pat Buchanan, 448,000 votes. That election was very, very close. In fact, George Bush needed 270 electoral votes to win. He got 271. Okay, 270 is that magic number that you need to get elected president. Al Gore, 267. So if any state, let's say South Dakota, would have voted for Gore rather than Bush, take 3 votes away from Bush, give 3 votes to Gore, and Gore is the president. Well, South Dakota wasn't close, but Florida was. Florida had 25 electoral votes. And when it was all said and done, George Bush won by about 500 votes. Now look at Ralph Nader. Nader got 97,000 votes here. Ralph Nader is liberal. Al Gore was liberal. If Ralph Nader wasn't in the election, we can assume that these 97,000 voters would have voted for Al Gore. And these 17,000 would have voted for George Bush if Buchanan wasn't in there. But 97,000 is a lot more than 17,000. And if these 97,000 voted for Gore, Gore wins Florida. And if Gore wins Florida, Gore won the presidency. You know, it was that close. So there is a relatively recent example when a minor party, in this case the Green Party, played a spoiler role in an election. We see it more at the local level than we do at the national level. But it does happen. It's good to understand what that means. Sometimes a minor party will encourage the major parties to face some kind of important issue. Ross Perot did really well running for president in 92. He didn't win any electoral votes, but he did take a lot of popular votes. In fact, he was the last candidate to get a lot of popular votes. And even though he didn't win, he forced some issues, especially the economy and government spending, to the forefront. Sometimes a minor party can do that. A candidate, may know, hey, you know what, I'm not going to win this election, but what I can do is get my ideas out there, and it may force the other two parties to address those ideas, or maybe to, um, you know, adopt some of those ideas for themselves. So they sometimes can um, help determine what issues are important in an election. And certainly Ross Perot did that in 92. Um, it is possible, sorry, my phone just went off. It is possible that they could take electoral votes away from a major candidate. Now, this doesn't happen very often. In fact, I apologize, I'm going to shut my phone off. Uh, it doesn't happen very often, especially anymore because our minor parties are not very strong. Uh, but we can look at times when minor parties have taken votes away. The last time that would be 1968, when well, basically 68, when George Wallace got 46 electoral votes. We see it happen. Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party got 88 electoral votes. Historically, we have seen it some, but in the last really 60, 70 years, well, 50 years, I suppose, the minor parties have become weaker and the major parties have become stronger. So the chance of a minor party actually taking away electoral votes today is pretty slim. In fact, there's no minor party right now that's strong enough to really to win a state to get electoral votes. But it is possible. The bigger impact of the spoiler role, though, that's probably the biggest impact of minor parties. All right, so that's a little um, short lecture on how minor parties work and political parties in general. We'll spend more time on parties in the next, day or so.